You're listening to Passions and Prologues, a literary podcast where each week I'll interview a new author about a thing they love and how it inspires their work. My name is Adam Sokol. The format of this podcast is going to be just a little bit different than any other literary podcast you've ever listened to, I promise. We're going to take a deep dive into these authors' lives in a way that is going to be centered around something that they are passionate about. It could be the Twilight Zone or collecting or hockey, or in today's example, weightlifting. Before we get into any of our interviews, I'm always going to talk to you just a little bit about something that I have enjoyed lately. Usually it's going to be a book, and then we'll get into any potential feedback we've gotten from our listeners. This is a brand new podcast, so of course I'm going to do the thing where I ask you to leave us some ratings and reviews, whether that's on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. But I'm going to make it a little bit special by saying, if you leave me a rating or review, just screenshot it and then email me at passionsandprologues@gmail.com, and I'll send you a book recommendation as a thank you. Really appreciate you being patient with me as I get back into the swing of things here, but I have been doing lots and lots of interviews with authors that I love for these first several weeks of the podcast, so I think you're going to be excited as well. Before I get into our interview, and there's no spoiler alerts, it's Mallory O'Meara. You'll have seen that in the name of this particular episode. But first, I want to talk to you about a book that I really, really loved. And the thing that I can't stop thinking about is Hannah Gadsby's 10 Steps to Nanette. Hannah Gadsby is a stand-up comedian from Australia. And if you are familiar with stand-up comedy at all, you have likely heard of their special Nanette. It is a very, very, anti-comedy, I guess would be a good way of putting it. Basically, Hannah Gadsby sets up this comedy special where the first half of it is all these incredible jokes, and then they transition into all of the trauma that they have experienced, trigger warning, big trigger warnings for sexual assault, sexual abuse, all sorts of different things. But they create a comforting space with these jokes and these different stories that they tell at the beginning to get the audience to trust them before putting them in an extremely uncomfortable position to experience a form of the trauma that they experienced throughout their lives. So 10 Steps to Nanette is a memoir that Hannah Gadsby has written all about their life and how they got to this particular special. It is just an absolute powerhouse of a book. I highly recommend borrowing or downloading or purchasing the audiobook version. Hannah Gadsby has a delightful accent and a wonderful way of reading, and that is just something that I think you'll really, really enjoy if you are a fan of the audiobook medium, which I am. Like I said, normally right here is where I will read off some reviews and feedback and emails that we get from our listeners. But as this is our first episode, we're not going to have any of those. So what I'm going to do instead is tell you all about my very first guest, Mallory O'Meara. Mallory is the host of the Reading Glasses podcast. She's the best-selling author of Girly Drinks and Lady from the Black Lagoon. Reading Glasses is one of the best podcasts out there, and the way that she writes about women's history is both educational and hilarious. And Mallory is just one of my closest buddies in the literary world. And so when I was launching this podcast, I immediately sent her a text message and said, I need you to be my first guest. And because Mallory is delightful, she of course said yes. We're not going to talk about girly drinks or cocktails or the book world all too much. What we're talking about today is her love of powerlifting. So I'm not going to spoil anything as to why Mallory loves powerlifting, how she got into it. That's going to be all in just a moment or two. But I hope that this first episode really helps set the groundwork for what you can expect from this podcast. A conversation with someone that you might know about a thing that you might not be expecting. So I'm not going to keep you around any longer. You have let me talk for several minutes in this introduction, kind of explaining the format. Let's get right to it. I am delighted to say that I hope you enjoy this episode of Passions and Prologues with Mallory O'Meara. All right, Mallory, what is the thing you're super passionate about that we're talking about today?
Powerlifting.
You might be my strongest author friend.
Well, I will say I am very strong, but you should also be friends with my friend Madeline Rue, who is also an author and a powerlifter, and she is super jacked.
I think I got to talk to her because of you or so. I remember talking about, I was like, this is going to sound weird, Malin, but I've watched you in your powerlifting videos and I'm a fan from afar. But when did you get introduced to powerlifting? How did you discover that you loved this?
So for years and years, my exercise took the form of running. When I lived in Brooklyn, 6 years ago. Brooklyn is a great place to be a runner. I used to run in Prospect Park, 3 or 4 times a week, but I hated running. I know you were a runner, and it feels terrible to admit to you, but running was never I never was woohoo, can't wait to go for a run. So afterwards, I'd be like, oh wow, I feel like I just went through a meat grinder, and that was great. And every once in a while, I very specifically remember the first run where I hit my stride, and I was like, wow, I don't feel like dying right now. This is great. But I never I was never passionate. I never got into running. And then I moved to LA, which is not as great of a running city because it's hotter and especially depending on which neighborhood you live in, there's just no huge parks like there are in New York with good running paths. So I started weightlifting because I was dating somebody who had a ton of weights at our loft and we had a bunch of space, and he was like, oh, well, if you don't like to run, why don't you just start lifting weights? And I had been to gyms and lifted weights before, but it never really did anything to excite me. Exercise always felt like punishment. It always felt just something I had to do so that, I don't turn into, a pile of useless jelly. So I started weightlifting, and I was like, this is really fun. It was the first time I had got really into it. I had gone to gyms before, but I have trigger warnings for folks. I have had eating disorders and a lot of disordered eating, and I just always had a really complicated relationship with my body. And so I never liked weightlifting at gyms because, you're just looking at yourself in the mirror the whole time. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have a lot of guidance. So when I get into something, I only have 2 modes of things. I'm either completely neutral or I'm obsessed. There's only 2 ways of being for me. I was very neutral toward weightlifting before because I didn't have anyone to show me what to do. And it was just sort of me punishing myself so I can try to achieve, this American female ideal of thinness, which is a big bunch of bullshit. But when I started lifting weights at my ex's apartment, and he was guiding me and showing me and having me start to take supplements, I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. And I started to see instead of just trying to work out to lose weight, I had stopped weighing myself by that point for years. And I only started to measure my progress in how much weight I could lift. And I was like, wait a minute, this is fucking cool. Yeah. And I got really into it. And then we broke up and I moved to a different place, a different neighborhood in Los Angeles. I made a friend who's still my friend. She was my neighbor at this apartment complex. And I knew there was a gym in the neighborhood. But I was kind of nervous to start going to another gym again and being around strangers and mirrors and shit. But her and I immediately became friends, and she is a workout freak. Her name is Maya. She works with the Lincoln Project. She's got abs, she's just like a queen. And I was like, I want to work out with you. She's like, all right, I go to this gym in the neighborhood. Let's start going together. And what really started to get me falling in love with it is that I had this friend to go. And you and I both know it just drastically changes your relationship with something when you have a community.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, first I had this friend that I worked out with, and we had so much fun. And then her and I are both super ambitious, overachieving types. And we would get up at 4:00 in the morning. She would meditate, I would make coffee, and then we would get to the gym when it opened at 5 a.m. before dawn. And when you get to the gym at 5 a.m. in the morning, there's only a few other people who are that much of a lunatic with you. So we saw the same people every day. We ended up becoming friends because, I'm a very friendly person.
Yes.
And within about a month, we had this friend group of people that we all were there at 5 a.m. We would all cheer each other on. We would all lift together. We would do the crossword puzzle with each other every day too. So in between sets, we'd run over to the front desk and try to fill in the crossword puzzle. It was just so much fun. And I never realized how much working out could be fun. And then there was one guy there, a guy named Rocky, and my friend, a woman named Kristen. And Kristen is a power lifter. And I saw her powerlifting, and I was like, because at that point I was just doing like curls and shit like that. I was just regular weightlifting. And I saw her powerlifting, and it was like, oh my God, this just looks so cool. It looks so like she just looks so powerful. She looks so awesome, and she looked like she was having so much fun. And I immediately was like, can you show me how to do this?
Yeah.
So her and Rocky also powerlifts. Rocky's also a friend of ours, and he's just totally ripped. And he used to be a coach, so he was like, yeah, I'll teach you how to do this. So he taught me how to do the 3 main lifts of powerlifting, which is benching, squatting, and deadlifting. I just immediately fell in love, and powerlifting it just changed absolutely everything in my life. It changed so many things, but that's how I fell into it, with friends and crossword puzzles. And it just looks fun. Yeah, no,
I know what you mean. It's also, I'm laughing throughout this because like, I know we've been friends for a while now, but I'm just like, every time we talk, I'm like, wow, we're such similar human beings. Cause you're absolutely right. Like I either don't care about something like really at all, or I deeply, deeply care about it. And
yes, that's why we were friends.
That's why we were friends. And like, absolutely right. So for me, I started lifting when I was in like 7th grade because I was an athlete in high school and college. And throughout like the end of college, I was always told what to lift by coaches. And like for a while, I really liked it. And I really liked like the concept of like looking at a big heavy thing and being like, I can lift that up. Like that was like my stupid.
Oh yeah. It's such a lizard brain shit. You're just like, it makes you feel cool.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like it's an absolute caveman bullshit where you're just like, I can lift that heavy thing. And now, admittedly, so I do go to the gym still several times a week. But like you said, I'm a runner. I'm a distance runner. And now my stupid caveman thing is I can run that far. Like it just doesn't matter. That's just how my like boil it down to being able to do that. But like you mentioned stopping looking at scales, and I am really similar to you. And like anybody looking at me from the outside looking in, my entire life would be like, that is an in shape person. He works out. He's an athlete and all of these things. I don't see any of that in myself. I never have. I have body dysmorphia. I feel like garbage all the time if I'm at the gym. And like you said, I see these like absolutely shredded people. I'm like, I want those bodies because that's just what I.
Because it's just a different body than yours.
Just a different body than mine, exactly. But like you're the same thing. Like a few years ago, I just stopped looking at scales. And like he's like, I run marathons. Like I'm a distance runner, and I still am like, I don't want to know what I weigh for any of this, but. The reason I fell in love with running is the same reason I think, like you said, you fell in love with lifting is I have a running group that is like my brother-in-law and my dad and my brother. And then all these guys, like there's like, I mean, like 20 of us, and we're a part of the larger Cleveland running community where like we'll get together and there'll be like literally hundreds of people that we have organized to do these runs together. And there's just something about that community of people doing this all together. But the people in like almost 100% of every runner I've ever met is just so welcoming and so just wanting to see how well you're doing for you. And it's just, I will admit that a lot of people I feel like running can be compared to writing, where it's like people love having run more than they love running.
Yes. Oh my God, that's such a great analogy.
Yeah, like people love having written as opposed to writing. I always say to people, like the reason I run really far is because there's no cheating it.
Yes.
You know, and you're actually going to be
either you do it or you don't.
Right, exactly. Like people will hear in the future episodes of this, like I am beginning querying a novel, and I did the hard thing. Like I was like, there's no getting around writing 130,000 words. Like there's no getting around running 20 miles. You have to go fucking do it. And that's the same thing with lifting. But what do you get out of lifting that has kept you going back day in and day out?
Oh my God, so many things. First off, again, like I said, it totally transformed a lot of things in my life, and it really transformed my relationship to my body. Trigger warnings for things. I've just really struggled with a lot of body stuff my whole life. And I was never an athlete. And anytime I was moving my body, it was for punishment or, quote unquote, earning my food or all that fucking toxic bullshit. It never really occurred to me that you could have fun with that stuff. Because for a while I was like, okay, why am I enjoying this so much? Am I feeling more powerful, sort of, but that does feel like a little ableist, you know what I mean? Like, what am I really doing? And I realized that it's nothing more complicated than having fun.
Yeah.
It's the first time I ever had fun with myself physically. And that fun and enjoyment made me want to work out. And all of a sudden, like we were just saying, I had stopped looking at the scale, and I started measuring my progress with how much I could lift, how much fun I was having, what I was doing. And one of the cool things about powerlifting for me personally was like, up until that point, I always thought of like food as I would have to earn it. You know, I had to eat as little as possible. Like I really felt good when I was eating as little as possible, but you can't do that when you're an athlete. You literally need to fuel yourself. So all of a sudden I went from like trying to eat as little as possible to nowadays I try to take in like between 100 and 120 grams of protein a day. Yeah. And I had to it was the first time where I had to eat a ton, and it made so it completely changed my relationship with food. It changed my relationship with the way that I look at my body. It was very interesting because my body started getting bigger, but I felt better. Yeah. Because I was like, I made this, you know, so much of weight loss and disordered eating and all that stuff is you're trying to feel in control because you don't feel in control over your body. And all of a sudden I was in control, but in a good, positive way. Like I made this stuff. It's so great to be able to look at your body and be like, hey, look at this fucking bicep. I made that shit. Yeah. You know, if I want to have more of it, I have to eat more and I have to work more. So it changed the way that I look at myself. I mean, I'm so much more confident now than I was before. Changed the way that I ate and had my relationship with food, changed my relationship with exercise and fun. And also something that I think is really, really important. And I don't think you necessarily have to do running or powerlifting to get this, but something that you very much understand, you're one of the few friends I have who does understand it, is that when you are an author or a book podcaster or you work in this industry at all, the thing that you love to do to relax is also your work. You know, I'm an author, I am a filmmaker, I am a book podcaster. So a lot of the things that I typically would enjoy to relax, whether that's watching a movie or listening to or reading a book or listening to a podcast or whatever it is, like almost all media and entertainment that I can take in for fun is also part of my job. And there's so that little work part of my brain never really shuts off except for when I'm lifting. Yeah. Because it has nothing to do with anything that I do for work.
Oh my God. It's literally the exact same. People say all the time, because anyone who knows me knows that in addition to being a gigantic book nerd, I am a huge audiobook person. I listen to so many audiobooks. And so people assume they're like, oh, well, you're running for an hour and a half. I assume you're listening to audiobooks, right? And I'm like, absolutely not. No, I need to let my brain completely either shut off or, like you said, and it's not even it's not to say it's a treat for me, but it's almost I know when I go run, I'm going to listen to an hour's worth of podcast. I'm going to listen to you and Bria, and I'm going to listen to Jordan Jesse Go. That's my running zone out. Exactly what you said. I know that for that hour, hour and a half, 45 minutes, however long I'm running, or like you said, if I'm going to the gym, I am going to listen to these podcasts that to me they're just cozy. It's like putting on a comfortable sweater. Which you don't want to do when you're running, but it's that moment. And again, like you said, I'm not saying it to me in my mind, it's not ooh, it's a treat. I'm running, so I deserve this podcast. It's more so just ooh, this is my podcast time. And I'm also going to be running. I have to be absolutely just gobsmacked by a book to want to continue listening to it when I'm running. Oh yeah. I'm just going to zone out.
I totally get it. Because right now we moved, my boyfriend and I moved away from Los Angeles. We moved up to the mountains a little over a year ago. I had to leave my gym. Of all the things we left behind in Los Angeles, the thing that was hardest for me was my gym. I literally packed up my gym shit and cried. Jeremy walked into our walk-in closet and I was holding my weight belt, packing it away, crying and I still every day I miss my gym friends. And when we moved up here, because I didn't powerlift for first year and a half, maybe more of the pandemic, because we were just all, I was stuck in my apartment. And there's a gym up here, but it's a little right wingy. And I was like, I don't want to get involved with that. So finally, what I did was I built a gym in our garage. Poor Jeremy was like, "Ooh, can't wait to park our car in the garage." And I was like, about that. So now the garage is like the Mallory zone. I have big tapestries on the walls. It's almost on my boyfriend has still stored some stuff in there, which I don't think we need to store in there. I wish I had more space where that's a constant push-pull. Yeah. But it's my spot. And I know that and one of the good things is I don't get service up there. It's about, 100 feet from our house, and we live on top of a mountain. Yeah. So when we're away from the Wi-Fi, I can't get texts, I can't get calls, I can't check my email, I can't check social media. The only thing I can do is listen to my music and lift. And it is my oasis. I can't think. And that's something that's really great about when you're working out is that I can't, when I'm picking up almost 300 pounds, I can't think about work. I have to be totally in my body. I have to be totally focused on my form perform in all the things that I'm doing. And for someone who is a anxious mess, who works all the time, who has multiple jobs and is like writing and making podcasts and trying to do other stuff, it is the biggest relief. And I think that every writer needs something that is totally outside the stuff that you do. It's because it also, you know, when I started getting involved in powerlifting, it felt really good to be involved with something that I'm just purely a fan of it. You know, I am not a professional. I'm purely an amateur. You know, I love watching my favorite lifters and watching lifting competitions and getting, and just like, I get so into it, and it feels so nice to just have one area of my life. Hockey's another one. But powerlifting really is the big one for me, is that just one area of my life where I don't have to like worry about my professional image, and I don't have to worry, like, I just don't have to be in that mindset, you know, because when I always have to be careful when I talk about books online or talk about books with people, because I know that there are eyes on me, and, you know, which is awesome. And I love recommending books, but it definitely, when you start to become in the public eye as an author, a writer, a book podcast, or whatever it is, it really fundamentally changes the way that you interact with those things in public. And it's so great to have an area of my life where I don't have to think about that. And I can just be like, hey, look at me pick up this heavy thing. And like, I don't have to worry about how people are going to, like, if people are going to, you know, take that book recommendation or get mad about that book recommendation. And it just feels like, I guess oasis really is the best word for it. Just this little oasis in my life. Yeah, no, I honestly feel the exact same about running, because I've told someone recently, like, as much as my life goal, I think I've jokingly told you in the past, like, you and Jeremy have the life that I want to leave someday, a cabin in the woods, writing books and working out. Like, but I know you're doing a million other things, but like, one of the reasons I love running so much is because I am out, whether it's on, you know, the streets around my house or in the trails in the metro parks here in Cleveland, wherever I am not Adam Sokol, the person that works for this tech company and creating content. I'm not a son or a brother or a friend. It's almost like the Game of Thrones thing. Like, I'm no one. Like, I get to be no one for an hour, and I can just, like, no one's noticing me unless it's one of those days where it's super hot and I'm not wearing a shirt. I'm sure there's some more so being like I should be wearing a shirt, like more one of those. But like, other than that, like, I can just be another person that you happen to glance by as you're driving by and be like, oh, that person's running, and like, no one knows who I am. Like, to me, that is my favorite thing. No one, even if anyone does quote unquote need me, they can't get it. Like you said, they can't get a hold of me. Like, no one can bother me when I'm doing that thing. Yes. Even just having, you know, especially now, you know, we're all so connected via smartphone, social media, text, emails. Like, there's always a way to get, so for someone to get in touch with you, there's always something to do on a screen. Yeah. And it sounds very old person-y to be like, oh, screens, but it really is, especially, you know, we've been in this pandemic for 2.5 years now. So much of all we've had are screens, you know, seeing friends on Zoom, watching things for entertainment, doing your work via Zoom, that it feels so good to like step outside. You know, now that the weather is nicer, when I lift, I leave the garage door open, I get the breeze, I get to like, my view when I deadlift is just like like a slope of trees, and it like it really does feel so amazing and relaxing and centering. I get, you know, all these like woo-woo words, but it's really true. Listen, I remember, I think it was like the first week you guys moved in there. You sent me a picture. It was either a sunrise or a sunset. Yeah. You're like, Adam, this is out of our bedroom window. And I was like, oh my God, she's living a Walden lifestyle. You're out there powerlifting like you're living at Walden Lake. I was like, oh my God, this is. If Walden was jacked, that's me. Exactly. Mallory David Thoreau. How would you say that powerlifting has had an effect on your work? Like, do you think there's a through line there? And if so, what would it be? Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think this age that we live in, it's so easy to be a workaholic, especially, most of us are home and work from home. There's no division between, there's no work-life balance, you start working from the second you wake up, and there are people I know who are really good about like, I'm only going to answer emails when I'm at my desk. Well, God, I wish I could be that kind of person, but I'm not, because everything is so mixed. My personal email is my work email. So I wake up and I check my email, and it's just like, it feels like I'm always working, always thinking about work. Yeah. So it was really hard to do that in the pandemic because I couldn't power lift. I bought a squat bar, but I couldn't, I can't load up my apartment with plates. I couldn't fit a squat rack in my 1-bedroom apartment that I shared with my boyfriend who also works from home. Yeah. And I did my best, but it's just not the same. Yeah. So for the first year of the pandemic, I wrote my second book, Girly Drinks, totally in lockdown. It was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done creatively. And now getting that break every day, because I can only write for, 3 to 4 hours at a time without hitting a wall. Yeah. But for so long, I really tried to push through that because, there is no work-life balance. It feels like there's nothing else to do. When you're not refilling that cup, it gets harder and harder to do every day. And I felt really burnt out after 2020. And getting to power, because I power lift 5 times a week, 1 to 2 hours a day, having that break where I'm moving myself physically, which is really great for my anxiety, and not thinking about work and being really present. I am not a present person. I'm the least mindful motherfucker on earth. Okay. I am so anxious, and I'm always like, I can't meditate. Even my therapist has given up on trying to get me to meditate because I just can't do it. I'm always thinking about 5 million things unless I'm lifting. So getting that break and like listening to my extremely loud dad metal and like chugging a protein shake and lifting things and just like having that time every day, or at least 5 times a week, it makes me feel it makes me feel more refreshed when I work. It makes me sleep better, which makes me work better. It just, it's so easy to forget that we have to have a holistic approach to our lives, and everything is connected. Everything affects each other. So, I see all the time people who are like, oh, I'm a really bad insomniac. And then a few hours later, they're like, just had my 5th coffee of the day. And I'm like, are you not seeing that all this stuff is connected? But it's hard, when we're just, it feels like there's no boundaries between anything. And I really feel like powerlifting has made me a better writer. It has made me healthier in so many ways, both mentally and physically. It just really has had nothing but the only negative part of powerlifting for me is that now I spend a lot of money on protein powder. But that's everything else has just been such a positive impact. Yeah.
Protein powder is not cheap, especially when it's good, healthy for you protein powder. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. I buy so much protein powder.
But you're absolutely right about the making time for it. So my brother works for the same company that I work for now, which also was true when I worked for Overdrive, which is hilarious.
Oh my God. That's adorable.
Yeah. And speaking of runners, my brother is on day 650 straight of running, which, hey guys, spoiler alert, that's not a healthy lifestyle. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to take breaks, and he freely admits it. But he is really good at doing the active break thing where he'll run 2 miles one day really slowly, but he wants to keep his streak. But just for anyone listening who hears me say that, I am fully aware that is not a healthy way to be a runner. I do not run that way. I take breaks. But this is all to say, I remember there was one day when I had first started this new company, and I was already burning myself out with how long I was working, my hours. And I sent him a message using our inner office instant messenger, and he didn't respond. And he got back to me an hour and a half later. He's like, oh, sorry, I was out for a run. And I was like, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He's like, yeah, man, I know for a fact you're working before 9 and you're going to be working past 5. You have to make time for yourself. And I don't know why at 36 I needed to hear that, but it helped me because I do the same thing now. When we get done recording this, we're recording in the afternoon, I'm going to go for a run, and I'm going to step away, and no instant message or email needs to be answered. Nothing is dire that needs to be solved instantaneously. I can take that time away for me. And you're absolutely right. I'll be more productive once I come back. I won't feel like I'm totally drained because I'll have refreshed my mind and my body and all that good stuff.
It feels so counterintuitive though, because you're in your brain, you're like, must not stop, must push through, must do more things, must produce more things. But you can do better and you can be more productive when you take those breaks. It seems like it seems fake. Sounds fake.
Yeah.
But it's so true.
Do you think you would ever write a book of any kind about powerlifting? Am I like stepping onto something you might be working on that you're not allowed to talk about?
Yes and no. And it's so funny because we spend so much time about being like, oh, this is so great that we're not talking about work. But of course, like I'm a nonfiction author. I'm a historian. And whenever I get into anything, like I want to learn the history of it. Like that's my jam. That's what I do. And so, yes, I would I've actually, I put together a pitch for a book about just general women's weightlifting that my editor was like, this could be something, but I have so many other books like in the pipeline before that. But I mean, I would love to, just because I want to know those things. Like I love, nothing makes me happier than women lifting weights. It's all I want to do. I want to watch women pick up heavy things. I want to look at women picking up heavy things. Like I just love women's weightlifting, whether that's strongman stuff or because there's so many different types of lifting. There's weightlifting, there's powerlifting, there's Olympic lifting, there's strongman stuff, and then there's bodybuilding. There's a lot of differences. There's a lot of different types, and they're all very different from each other. But I love watching them all. Yeah. I would love to write the history of women in weightlifting. I would love to write about several female, there's a bodybuilder that I really admire that I'd love to write about. There's just a regular power lifter I'd really love to write about. But again, I'm working on my new book right now, and I have at least 1 to 2 other books in the pipeline before I could get to it. So yes and no.
Yeah, you might be the busiest person. You and Zoraida Cordova might be the 2 busiest human beings I've ever seen.
Zoraida kicks my ass up and down the street. I don't know how she does it.
I'm asking every author I talk to, like, what they're currently working on or that you want to promote that you can talk about. Obviously, we can talk about Girly Drinks, but do you have stuff that you're allowed to talk about right now that's like coming out in the nearest future, or should we stick with Girly Drinks?
Oh, no. I have my 3rd book is coming out, I think either in January or in February next year, which sounds really far away, but isn't in book talk. Nope. It's called Girls Make Movies. It's my first children's book. Yes, I managed to write a whole book without swearing. I was really proud of myself. It's very difficult to do. And I'm doing it with my friend Jen Vaughn. So I'm writing it. She's illustrating it. It's called Girls Make Movies. And it's, we believe, the world's first choose your own adventure styled nonfiction book.
Wait, here's the most important question. Are there footnotes?
No. Oh, well, they're not footnotes, but we're calling them sidebars. So they're like pulled, like little fun facts and little observations and stuff, but they're pulled out of the text and in like little illustrated cool boxes. So it's kind of like footnotes, but it is for children. So we had to change the format up a little bit.
Listen, I can't imagine a world, you being the first person to be on this podcast and having our history of being on each other's podcasts in the past. I can't imagine a world where anyone listening to this doesn't know what we're talking about. But for people who don't know, Mallory's first 2 books have just the best footnotes in the entire world. And they're so funny. Lady from the Black Lagoon and Girly Drinks, they're both just so freaking like anytime. Normally, I will admit, when I'm reading a book and I see footnotes, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to remember where I was in the page to read this footnote, or I'm going to have to wait. But yours, every time I turn a page in your books and I see a footnote, I get excited. So I had to ask.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just kind of how I write. So I really we were trying to figure out how to format them, but they are in there. So it's not up for pre-order yet, but the preliminary illustrations are done. They look incredible. Basically, it teaches girls how to make movies, and it's through the creation of a fake, like a fictional, non-existent movie called Sasha vs. Zombies, about a teenage makeup artist, her friends who disguise themselves as zombies to escape from a zombie horde that is attacking their small town. But as you go through each step of how to make the movie, you get to meet every single crew member on the film, and she tells you, and basically it's like, okay, well, here's what this person does, here's how they got there, here's what they love about their job, here's some famous ones from history and cool movies that they worked on. So it teaches young girls how to make movies, teaches them about the history of women in film. And the way that you go through the book is like, okay, well, do you want your zombies to be practical effects? Flip to this page. And then you meet, the special effects workshop folks, or you want them to be CGI. You flip to this other page and you meet the VFX shop folks. There's several different paths through the book. One of them you will fail and you'll have to go back. But the goal is to make your film and end up at the premiere at the very end. It's so much fun. The art, Jen knocked the doors off the art. It's so cool. It's so fun. So that is coming out again in either January or February. It's not up for pre-order yet. And then I am working on my fourth book as well, which is going to be my third adult nonfiction with my same editor, my same publisher. My editor, Peter, specifically doesn't want me to tell people who it is. I can tell you after we stop recording.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was going to say, sorry, everyone else. I'm going to go ahead and take that information privately.
But it is another biography about a forgotten, very important woman in Hollywood during a different time period than Lady from the Black Lagoon. And I am so excited about it. It's so much fun. I'm really excited to return to the world of Hollywood history. I'm having a blast with it. And that will be out maybe beginning of 2024. Mm-hmm. I have no idea.
Listen, this podcast are an audio medium, so people can't see, but while you're talking about your children's book, the shit-eating grin I just had on my face, this sounds so delightful. Oh my God.
Oh, so fun. I'm so excited.
All right, so I am ending these conversations by asking everybody for any type of recommendation that you want to give. It can be a book, but I know you spend all day doing that. It can be a TV show. It can be, this is going to air in like June. So, I mean, it can be a sporting event if you want. It could be your favorite protein, anything that you want to recommend.
I mean, I'm always down for book recommendations, but I will switch it up and recommend the protein powder that I use. Well, it's my protein, my creatine, and my pre-workout drink. It is this company called Buff Chick. So that's BUFF Chick. And it's all like female owned and operated. It's not like meant specifically for any type of body. You could, anyone like male, female, non-binary, genderless, like doesn't matter who you are. There's nothing like specifically for certain types of lifters in it. It's just really good protein powder and it tastes really good, which we both know can be something that's hard to find in protein powder. I use them for everything. So if you are someone who's looking to get into weightlifting, protein is so important. You know, what you put in your body is almost as important as how hard you work. So if you're, one of the early mistakes I made when I first started lifting, before I started powerlifting, was I wasn't eating enough protein. I was still not eating that much. And I was like, why am I not getting buff? Well, you got to eat a bunch of proteins. I highly recommend getting a protein powder, trying to figure out, there's a formula, look up online for your specific body, how much protein you need to eat per day to put on muscle. Again, I try to hit like 100, 110, 120. But if you're looking for a great brand, I know it's very overwhelming and so many of them are kind of scary. They're like extreme protein and you're like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Calm down here.
Why do Doritos and protein have the same marketing?
I know, everyone just needs to calm down a little bit. So, it can be really overwhelming. And the one that I use and I love and I recommend is Buff Chick supplements.
That's awesome. All right, I'm going to make you do one book recommendation too.
Oh my God. Okay, cool. Adam, have you read The Book of the Most Precious Substance yet?
No, you've told me to though. It's on my list. I promise.
Adam. So I keep pitching it to people as if the movie The Ninth Gate was good.
Yeah, and it's such a that makes me. I'm so glad that I haven't yet.
Rare books, magical books, book detectives, book sex magic, and like a little bit of spooky stuff. Yeah. It is so good. It's one of my favorite books of the year. It just came out in February. It's by Sarah Gran, and oh my God, I love it so much. That's Book of the Most Precious Substance by Sarah Gran.
To tell everyone how much Mallory loves this, you read a copy of it before it came out, and like before the book came out, you texted me and you were like, "This is an Adam book," and I haven't read it yet, and
you'll love it. You'll love it. Oh. I am so excited.
I'm so disappointed in myself, and I will say,
you have literally the rest of your life. It's fine.
I know, but I should have read it by now, and. I normally will do this at the beginning of the show, but anyone listening, seriously, listen to Hannah Gadsby's memoir, 10 Steps to Nanette. It's just so good. I just highly recommend it.
I also have that on my TBR, so I'm very excited.
Like I said, the audiobook, you have to listen to the audiobook. Their voice is just so soothing and delightful. All right, Mallory, I told you about the idea of this podcast like months before it existed. And when it finally started to exist, you were the first person I texted to come on, and you immediately said yes. So
of course, always.
I super appreciate it. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for letting me talk about powerlifting for like half an hour straight. That's all I want to do.
Yeah. Passions and Prologues is proud to be an evergreen podcast and was created by Adam Sokol. It was produced by Adam Sokol and Sean Rule Hoffman. And if you are interested in this podcast and any other evergreen podcast, you can go to evergreenpodcast.com to discover all the different stories we have to tell.